FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Financial Survival Network is brought to you today by Orin Resources, a junior exploration company with the appetite of a major. It's hot on the trail of the next globally significant discovery, creating enormous potential upside for you, the shareholder. Orin is one of the most aggressive exploration companies pursuing high-grade, scalable gold and copper deposits and has a premier 7-project portfolio, including its 2 flagships, Committee Bay in the Arctic and Sombrero in Peru. Orin's unparalleled technical team and highly experienced management has a history of success in advancing and monetizing exploration assets. No wonder Orin's been called one of the best in the junior exploration sector. Orin trades on the TSX and the NYSE under AUG. To learn more, go to orinresources.com. That's AURYN resources.com.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. It's May 30th, 2019. Just one more day left to go in May. Well, May is one of those months, as they say on the street, sell in May and go away. And probably you didn't. I didn't. And probably we both should have. But here we are. Well, anyways, looking at the political scene, things are crazier than ever. You had Comrade Herr Mueller get up there and say, well, he coulda, shoulda, woulda, couldn't do it, so it's up to you, Congress. He's throwing the anti-Trump forces a lifeline, and I guess the anti-Trump people out there who have suffering. Are you suffering from Trump Derangement Syndrome? Now you're probably suffering from Mueller Trump Derangement Syndrome. They're probably going to have to come up with a new code for that, and a new personality disorder. It's definitely a disorder. I've met these people and they're crazy, but hey, that's my opinion. We got Dr. John Huber on with us now, clinical psychologist, knows all about this. Dr. Huber, it's great to have you back. So what about Trump-Mueller Derangement Syndrome? I mean, it really, you got to expand it now.
Well, what we've got is we've been inundated by the media for the whole term of Trump, before he even swore in, that he is going to be impeached, that he's a criminal, he's a crook, he hasn't shown you his tax returns because he's a crook, all this kind of stuff. Yet, he's one of those guys who makes so much money, he's always being audited by the IRS. I mean, if there's something there, the IRS would have already got. I mean, I have some acquaintances and some friends who are very wealthy, have their jet planes and stuff, and they all are always under audit by the IRS, period. So it's a moot point, but the average person who doesn't know anybody like that doesn't understand that, doesn't know that. And they are really ramping this up. And the media is telling you every day how evil he is. Now, one of the things that I've seen in politics over the years is if they have to tell you something, it's not true. And you got this person who went through Mueller, who went through, 2 years trying to find a connection between Trump and the Russians and collusion. And what he ended up doing were 13 convictions or 13 arrests, and they all had to do with their personal taxes and tax evasion and tax avoidance somehow that was illegal. Most of them before they even met Trump. They'd never met Trump before. And so this person was unable to do that. If he would have found something, he would have prosecuted. Now, I'm a forensic psychologist. I go to court. I testify. And if there is a ground for an arrest, they make an arrest. And this man, Mueller, is getting so much pressure from Congress. If there was something there, he would have moved on it. And that's for criminal charges. Now, he's going off, hey, you guys can still impeach him and do your own investigation. We spent $20 million of our taxpayers' money trying to convict Trump on something that somebody trumped up the charges on.
Yeah,
and the media every day is saying, he's guilty, he's guilty, he's guilty. Then this information came out, and you got a large portion of the population that are just convinced now that he's guilty. There's no evidence that he's guilty, but they're convinced he's guilty. So, and he's the most evil president since, we've had presidents and all this kind of stuff. Yet he has no arrest. He's been awarded, 9 times by the NAACP for helping minority groups in Chicago, Detroit, New York. Jesse Jackson has given multiple awards. One of his best acquaintances was Oprah. He was always on her show. But the thing is, this man is smarter than they want you to know. And he is manipulating everybody because they're giving him the opportunity to. If the media would back off and just report what's going on in the news, he would lose so much of his power and his abilities. But because they go after every word he says things intentionally to redirect people's attention, and then he goes and takes care of business. He's probably the first president that I can recall that actually ran on a platform and actually tried to instill that platform when he was in office. He has lowered taxes for everybody, not just the wealthy. He has turned this economy around, and we have the lowest unemployment rate. We have the lowest minority unemployment rate. It's just incredible what he's done. Most people in this country today are better off because he's been there, but the media is not going to tell you that.
No,
because he's guilty, and they believe that because Mueller sat there and had these conversations with the powers that be, who probably truly did collude, and
we know they
are
did.
trying to manipulate and control the election. And I'm just speculating. I don't know these people, and I do know that the media, several outlets have called me, asked me to make a statement about mental health issues with Donald Trump. And there's some serious ethical issues with that. There's actually a law that says I can't do that to a sitting president. And if I do assess a sitting president, he has to give me a consent to be able to disclose that information.
Which is nuts, right? Isn't that crazy? Yeah, he's never going to do that.
So anybody who says that he has a certain disorder or that he has, this mental problem or that mental problem, and they're a licensed professional, they're doing a couple of things. They're violating laws. They are putting their own personal professional license at risk. And that makes me question all of their credibility, period. The National Enquirer had me in, I think 3 months after he was sworn in, and they asked me to make a statement. And what I did is I went and I looked at the behavior of all the presidents back to Eisenhower, and basically every one of them shows narcissistic tendencies. Every one of them shows these grandiose beliefs in their abilities to perform.
Mm-hmm.
That, to me, seems like a prerequisite to be president. So, he's no different than them, because you have to be able to stand up there no matter what people say to you and stand on your 2 feet and say, this is what I'm going to do. And the Mueller people were praying and wanting him to be found guilty so they could remove him from office. And of course, the Trump people turn around and tell me, well, that's great, do it, because then Pence will become president, and then he will immediately pardon Trump. Trump will be then appointed vice president, and then Pence will resign, and he's back in presidency. So, I mean,
that is
crazy.
Delusional.
I've been hearing.
That's so delusional. Like, if Pence ever got to be president, the last thing he's doing is, and you have to get it through the Senate too, don't mind you. You can't just appoint the vice president.
Right.
When Spiro Agnew resigned, the Nixon chose Jerry Ford, and the Senate approved him. That was the way that worked. And then when Nixon resigned, Ford became president, but he didn't go and reappoint Nixon as vice president and then retire himself. That just could never happen, Doctor. I mean, so
no, you're right. You're right. That's what I'm saying. I've got people on extremes on both sides of the aisle telling me one thing and the other, oh, don't worry about this. And they're all kind of this conspiracy thing, and it goes back to that Mueller Trump Derangement Syndrome, that they're absolutely right. And whether it's for Mueller or for Trump or arresting Trump and locking him away, I mean, and they're so invested in it that both sides cannot see the rational evidence that suggests that both of them are barking up a empty tree.
Yep.
And it's pretty bizarre. But they're invested not just superficially, but their whole heart. I mean,
their identity.
They believe it beyond a doubt.
Their identity. It's if it doesn't happen the way they want it to happen, then effectively they die, right? Their identity dies. And that's a horrible thing. That's like the addict who is like, gee, if I give up drugs, if I give up alcohol or whatever, gambling, I'll cease to exist. I mean, my identity will be gone.
The addict is more like, then I have to exist and I can't. Mm-hmm. I don't have enough of my own person to maintain my life.
Right. So
yeah.
So what is it? I guess awareness is the first thing. How do you explain to one of these people that, you have a problem?
Well, it is a difficult task, just like telling an addict that they have a problem. Usually everybody else around them seems to have a problem. The addict is perfectly fine staying drunk or stoned or whatever. And that's kind of the same situation. I think the analogy of an addict is very perfect. It's about as perfect as you can get, because they all have this ego tied to an outside source of control, whether it's Mueller convicting Trump or Trump, changing the government and doing whatever they think you should be doing, or that addict who is not the same person when they're on their drugs, but when they're off the drugs and they're clean and sober, everybody goes, "Oh, that's the guy I grew up with."
Yeah. Hey, so it is kind of funny because you look at them. So we need like a list. You may be suffering from Trump Derangement Syndrome if, and then we need like a list of symptoms here. So you're watching more than 15 minutes of CNN or MSNBC a day. Is that like an indicator?
Yeah, that's a big indicator. I think, we're running now the 24-hour news cycle is no longer 24 hours. It's about a 10 or 15-minute news cycle. Because if you turn off TV, it's on your social media. You turn off your social media, it's on the news app on your cell phone. And it is just continually plugging away. So if you're doing more than about 15 minutes of news pro either side, you've got a problem. The other sign that people often miss is if you believe that everybody around you feels exactly and believes exactly the same thing you do.
And if they don't, then there's something fundamentally wrong. They're mentally challenged or disabled, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, like
Absolutely.
If they don't believe what
now,
you believe.
It's interesting because I brought up social media because so many people, if we think back to what we learned in high school and college about groupthink, how we get a whole group together and they all start becoming very extreme because they're being reinforced by each other. And the way to achieve superiority in that groupthink hierarchy is to have the most extreme beliefs. And people then start following you. And what we do with social media, for example, is we unfriend the people who don't think like us.
Yeah.
And then we friend more and more people who think like us. So when you're walking down that street, whether it's in Miami, Dallas, New York, Chicago, wherever, and you're looking at your social media and you've got your headphones on and you're hearing all this stuff, you're walking, maybe crossing a street with another 200 people, and you believe every single one of them believes exactly like you do. And you start to have these and it pushes these ideas into extreme measures because you want to have a voice in your group. And the only way to do that is to be more extreme than the rest of the people in the group.
Yeah, it's this race to the bottom or the race to irrationality. It's madness.
Absolutely.
It's craziness. So, well, we're going to have to explore this further, Doctor, because really it seems to be an epidemic too. I guess it's kind of like the same kind of thing that went through in Nazi Germany, where an idea takes hold and the entire population, or at least a big majority of it, enough to control the place, buys into it. They believe it to be true, and then they use it as a justification to eliminate anybody who doesn't agree with it. We haven't gotten to that point yet, but it really is the same process, isn't it?
It is absolutely the same process. And I think what you'll be surprised is that it does not take a majority for that to happen. In fact, social scientists have studied what was going on when Hitler's takeover, the Nazis took over, and everything else. And it was only around 9 to 10% of the population that truly believed all of that stuff. And everybody else was afraid they were going to become a victim if they stood up about it. So they let that 10% dictate and mandate what was going to happen. So it does not take a majority. It takes a vocal minority. And I think that that's what we're seeing people trying to do.
Yeah, well, in the United States, it's a little bit different, I think.
Yes.
I think we've always been a country. There's always been, I shouldn't say the entire country, but there's a portion of the country that have always been free thinkers and didn't buy into the orthodoxy, didn't buy into the propaganda. And I think those people are still alive and well, and it's happening now. And they're just not going to allow it to continue. And if that's, so let's go back to the Civil War. So, there were a lot of causes of the Civil War. We know that. But
yes,
as one person said, if one West Point historian said, if there was no slavery, there wouldn't have been a Civil War, right? I mean, I think we could agree on that.
True.
It doesn't mean it's the only cause. It might not have been, well, it had to have been the major cause, but if it didn't exist, they probably would have figured out a way to work out the tariffs and the anti-South bias from the North. And probably a good possibility, put it that way. So, but yet everybody, it seems like the South bought into their cause a lot more than the North bought into its cause. And it was only due to the overwhelming numbers of the North and resources that they could bring against the South that defeated the South. But it seemed like the cause of the South, and whether it was slavery or way of life or whatever it was much more ingrained into those Southerners than into like the Northern values, I guess.
It does seem that way in retrospect. And it's interesting when we talk about slavery because, again, less than 3% of the population of this country owned slaves at its peak. It was right at almost 3%. And, that's all that owned slaves. And that's a pretty scary thought. Again, it's a minority of people who had a lot of wealth and they controlled a lot of things and they had a big voice. And I think it was the few, like you said, I mean, everything else we probably could have negotiated and worked through. But I mean, I'm from Texas and you hear this, remember the Alamo, and we consider this huge historic landmark. And I've been there several times, take my kids there. But the whole reason for the Alamo was slavery because Mexico started to claim Texas, but 3 years earlier, they had outlawed and banned slavery. And the slave owners in Texas didn't want to give up their slaves at that point. So they stood up to them, and that's what started Texas independence in the Alamo. And you never hear that in the history classes.
Really? So that was the true cause of it, huh? Never knew that. So it was all about slavery. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Who would have thought? Well, hey, it's Stranger Things, right?
Definitely.
Huh. Interesting. You learn something new every day. Well, hey, so Doctor, where do we find you? Where do we check out your work and connect with you?
Well, we are online at mainstreammentalhealth.org, but there's an easy way to find that, drpsycho.org, drpsycho.org.
I love that.
And if you're in New York, I'm actually going to be at Comic Strip Live June 9th.
No, really?
Actually, Jerry Cooney's going to be there. Gentleman Jerry Cooney. I consider him a friend, and he's going to be there. It's going to be an amazing time. We're going to have a competition, and he's going to award the winner.
This is wonderful. Hey, I'm so happy for you. That's great. It's kind of like, it's something I know I could do if I just had the guts to do it, but I really don't. I totally don't. I mean,
well, it's kind of a relief because I don't have to cite anybody or quote. I just go up there and talk about my family and how nuts we are, and I get tons of laughs.
That's always good for some laughs. That's always good for some laughs.
Yes. So there's a lot of actual good things that happen when you laugh. There's hormones that actually increase the elasticity of your blood vessels and lower your risk for strokes and other types of heart attacks and things like that. So laughing is amazing.
I don't think it's going to work for Colbert, though, or for Jimmy Fallon. Not when their 15 minutes of their show is how they hate Trump, And like, hey, I think Trump is a target-rich environment for comedians. Don't get me wrong. Everything about him, I find really funny, but not 15 minutes worth of this stuff, where to the exclusion of all the other.
It's been done over and over and over. I mean, how many times can you say this same joke?
Orange man bad. Orange man bad. Ha ha ha. This just doesn't work. I find it really funny, though, that they don't get it. So, hey, what can you do? One day maybe they'll catch on. Anyways, it's always great having you on, Dr. Huber. Questions or comments for the good doctor or myself? Email is kl@kerrylutz.com. Facebook pages, Financial Survival Network. Twitter, excuse me. Twitter is @KerryLutz. And if you're listening on any podcast platform or watching on YouTube, please subscribe, share, and like. Subscribe, share, and like. Really helps me a lot when you do that. Helps get these ideas out there to the public marketplace of ideas. Dr. Huber, always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kerry. Amazing show, man. Keep it up.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.